Couple of things. There was an interesting article in the New York Times about the suicide epidemic. Because it was written in from San Francisco, it had a lot to do with the bridge. Toronto took a stance and closed the viaduct in terms of making it a safer place. But what does this do?
Well, they go to the Leaside Side Bridge.
This morning I drove by the Leaside Side Bridge and there was a big flower thing
you
around
saw that,
there.
eh? I was there right after he jumped. I drove across it right after
Somebody
he jumped.
obviously, and there was a big...
Middle of the day.
If there's a reason to think or to rethink that, if there's a reason to kind of disconnect the one from the other, that will be really interesting because in some ways, because suicide is then presented as an expression of an illness, rather than as a rational decision on the part of a person to say, for whatever the reason, I cannot do it any longer.
It would be interesting to look at why are we more isolated, or are we more isolated?
Social media.
And there's a few people that have thrown out, and to have those different voices on that have looked at sort of different reasons as to why. One being social media. That Atlantic article I know you pitched a long time ago about how Facebook and social media, you're not actually connecting with people, with empathy, Vodek.
Oh yes,
I
feel better now.
You're consuming more and more yourself.
Did you know the highest suicide rate in Latin America?
In North America?
Latin America.
Latin America.
Why? Where?
Do you know where?
No.
Cuba.
Really?
Because of communism.
Really?
Yeah.
All right, so I know we've touched on this in the past, but let's do it again. And let's
Tell us what it is. You walk away after
This is the prime. Okay, so in the past we've talked about lobbying and how public institute. Well, we talked about how hospitals had been lobbying the government. This is ridiculous. We're giving the money and then using it back to lobby the government. The Nation came out with this in the past few weeks. In the U.S., official 2013 spending on lobbying was $3.2 billion. However, experts say it's more like $9 billion. Lobbying as a practice, I think it'd be very interesting to dive into it, both history in Canada, look at the Pacific scandals, CPR and McDonald. Moving forward with the Federal Accountability Act, the Conservatives brought out in 2006. The add-ons to that, a lot of people saying it had been diluted once it was actually put into place. A lot of people saying they do some good in terms of pushing timely research to government who don't have a lot of tools to do so, and they're able to help guide people through the process, so clients and associations that would otherwise be really hard. It's become extremely complicated to get one-on-one with a politician and look at the good and the bad.
The news hook is that, of course, we're seeing measles outbreaks in a lot of major North American cities, and you say, WTF, this shouldn't be happening since there is a vaccine for this. Right. It's all Jenny McCarthy's fault. It's the anti-science left.
We'll be talking
We've done
about
this.
that in autism.
Yeah. Do we want to give her that attention?
Because
my MO has been to ignore her.
I'm going to give it to Penn and Teller and the rebuttal.
Okay. Well, anyway, if we want to give more weight to the measles outbreak,
think
because
we do.
I've been doing mental health for way too long. Medical professionals are just completely alarmed that this is happening.
It's also whooping cough.
Whooping cough.
There's a bunch of the very preventable diseases that are in comeback.
I know that when I remember being in public school and they were saying that you had to get these vaccines or you could not be in school. And I see a lot of do they still do that? Okay, so what I'm wondering is how are there still these outbreaks when are these kids not going to public school?
Well, the Toronto Region Board of Trade people phoned me up on yesterday, and said that on Monday they're going to be releasing a report in conjunction with Roger Martin from Rotman about the Toronto region. And so the Toronto Region Board of Trade has been doing a lot of work on trying to turn the GTA into this larger Greater Toronto Hamilton conglomerate. And basically what Roger Martin's going to come out and say is that we're doing a very bad job at this. We need to basically give our heads a shake if we want to succeed in the new global economy. Apparently Roger is going to be doing interviews related to this, so if we could get him in and have him talk about his report and the findings, and then do a larger panel discussion about, if the GTHA actually does want to be a region.
Toronto's a very big city, and Hamilton's at least a medium-sized city, and then you have smaller cities. They're not regions. These are their own entities, so you can see why they might have a hard time agreeing on things.
Two ideas.
Great.
That we should have a really high-powered panel on the geopolitical implications of what's happening in Ukraine. There's a real big debate going on, and how to think about Russia's sensitivities, and how sensitive we have to be to their sensitivities, and then where is the boundary that of that. Obviously, and now there's Harper is. Thinking seriously about what the implications are in regard to the North, and our future dealings with Russia. It's been years, I think, that I produced with the title "Russia, Friend and Foe." Now there's even.
Is it fair to say that both NATO and the EU have gained like a huge amount of importance in the past few weeks?
No, because what has shown yesterday's. Announcements from EU and the United States shown that obviously the toolbox is very small, and very tiny, and Europe is more so than the United States is very much compromised by the fact that they're afraid they need Russian imports, they need Russian exports, they need Germans, especially German businessmen, have been incredibly active in trying to persuade Merkel not to be too aggressive vis-a-vis Russians.
It's the psychology of disappearing completely. And that would be all of the angst around the Malaysian airline going down.
Oh, that, as opposed to David's pitch on disappearing.
No. This is a much more practical
Would have been a great
sense.
story of the week
I was
last
thinking
week.
about the Aboriginal
It's
women.
not- it's not-
Disappearance Week. I
Yes.
just can't believe how much I'm thinking about this.
Guys, a
place.
plane disappeared.
Because there's
Totally
no
in your
Wheelhouse?
Yeah,
there's no answer.
no, but I
Does anyone else?
It's both
This-
I've been
comedy
totally
and
obsessed with this story. I
Because-
don't get upset.
And
It's just
obviously we
gone.
can't do a news coverage of this. Like it's
Yeah.
going to be beaten to death within, it's
Already.
But the idea of the psychology of disappearing completely
in
is
a
some
24/7
take that
news
we
cycle.
could do on it. And I think our audience would really, really find it interesting. It's going to breed so many conspiracy theories.
What's the alternative? So it's not state socialism and it's not corporate capitalism. And the guys involved in this movement are not pie-eyed idealists. Gus Speth was a former presidential advisor to Carter and Clinton. John Fullerton, who recently signed on to the New Economy Coalition, is a former managing director at JP Morgan. So worker-owned cooperatives are a big part of this new economy movement. Along with sort of rethinking ownership, they also look at rethinking banking on a few different levels. The Bank of North Dakota is state-owned. And
What's happening in Canada?
Those
The
guys
credit
about it.
union movement's really big on that.
Really big
right?
in Canada.
And we really
And-
pioneered that.
And just look at the practical side. I don't want to have a big political and theoretical discussion where you'll get grand sweeping historical narratives. I want to just look at what's happening and how it's working with 3 or 4 of them. When you hear those grand sweeping narratives, you're like, okay.
Yeah, but what
But
motivates
I'm just
you,
saying with these guys.
what motivates you is not bits and pieces, but the grand narrative.
Yeah,
There's
and
an
that'll-
alternative way of organizing and managing production and economy and
I think it'd be
communities
more
and-
interesting off the start to talk about where it's working, and then let them explain sort of.
We are not we're
What
not
their
producing
vision
right
is.
now, but somehow the reason for why you want to do this,
Right.
you have to hide from
Stop
it. You know?
telling him what to think.
It's funny when we talked about this.
He's
You're like,
used to
look
that.
out for Gar Alperovich.
We
because
all
he'll
are.
give you the
Thank you.
grand.
Thanks, everyone. That's a hell of a
Planes in
meeting.
Crimea.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.